What's going on, Habibis? It's Siraj Hashmi. It's Keeping It Halal for Friday, May 22nd, in the year of Allah, 2020. It's the final Friday of Ramadan. Feeling pretty good. I've gone 28-0 so far. 2 more days left by the time I'm recording this. A lot of news this week. I have been drinking from a fire hose in terms of content, and yet I have not put out nearly as much stuff as I would have liked to. And this is I'm gonna have to limit this and try to shorten this as much as possible because I simply don't want to get bogged down and into the weeds. So I'm just gonna give it to you as straight as I possibly can without getting too windy and tangential. First of all, Florida. Everybody has been keeping their eyes on Florida with respect to coronavirus. I, in particular, have been trying to keep an eye on the data. However, with respect to a lot of the disinformation and misinformation that we're seeing, a lot of the things that we're seeing from Florida have revolved around Governor Ron DeSantis and his handling of the coronavirus in his state. One particular story came out this week from Florida Today, and it is titled Coronavirus as Florida Reopens, COVID-19 Data Chief Gets Sidelined and Researchers Cry Foul. Now, this was published on May 18th, so that was earlier this week. And essentially, the point of the article, and this is something that was highlighted by a particular Washington Post journalist by the name of Hamza Shaban. In his tweet, he wrote, "The data scientist who designed Florida's COVID-19 dashboard, a mobile-friendly, intuitive display of the outbreak, has been removed from her position because she refused to censor data and manipulate numbers to generate support for reopening," she says. And this lady, her name is Rebecca Jones, if you haven't heard of her. She was one of those types of people, a whistleblower, if you will, within the Florida State Department of Health. And as I said before, or at least was reading from before, she claims she was fired for refusing to censor data and manipulate numbers to generate support for reopening. The truth of the matter is, this is obviously an exaggeration and a misinterpretation of what actually happened. Jones was asked to temporarily disable the ability to export data from the dashboard so that it could be verified that the data matched other sources. Okay, so there's a ton of data out there. If you're not familiar with it already, there's almost too much data on coronavirus. There's data by state, down to obviously region and county. We're getting case numbers, death numbers, death rates, case rates, particularly per 100,000 people. You're getting hospitalization rates, you're getting recovery. There's too many numbers out there. And the important thing when you're putting out data and statistics is to get it right. I don't know what actually happened in the case of Rebecca Jones. This is what Florida Governor Ron DeSantis had to say with respect to his defense of reopening Florida.
Our data is available. Our data is transparent. In fact, Dr. Birx has talked multiple times about how Florida has the absolute best data. So any insinuation otherwise is just typical partisan narrative trying to be spun. And part of the reason is that because you got a lot of people in your profession who waxed poetically for weeks and weeks about how Florida was going to be just like New York, Wait 2 weeks, Florida's going to be next. Just like Italy, wait 2 weeks. Well, hell, we're 8 weeks away from that, and it hasn't happened. Not only do we have a lower death rate, well, we have way lower deaths generally. We have a lower death rate than the Acela corridor, D.C., everyone up there. We have a lower death rate than the Midwest, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. But even in our region, Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Florida has the lower death rate. And I was the #1 landing spot from tens of thousands of people leaving the #1 hot zone in the world to come to my state. So we've succeeded, and I think that people just don't want to recognize it because it challenges their narrative, it challenges their assumption, so they got to try to find a boogeyman. Maybe it's that there are black helicopters circling the Department of Health. If you believe that, I got a bridge in Brooklyn I'd like to sell you.
Last question.
Okay. Ron DeSantis, right there. Pretty vocal, pretty adamant, pretty defensive, and rightfully so. I mean, everybody was dragging DeSantis. His approval numbers went in the tank because of his decision to reopen. And people have been focusing mostly on case numbers and deaths as statistics to sort of impugn him, as well as Georgia Governor Brian Kemp. Here's what the data is showing us. And I'm going to go to a publication that mostly everyone respects, and that's ProPublica. Let's just look at some data. ProPublica, trusted source by pretty much everyone, has some interesting numbers. So Florida, for example, has they haven't had a stay-at-home order for 18 days. They have a low number of positive tests per capita. That's 0 to 5. In fact, if you read the data, it says 3.3 positive tests, saying that's increasing from May 8th to May 21st. All right, so that's, but not much. It's not increased a whole lot. Percentage of tests that are positive, that's been decreasing. That's at 2.6%. However, they have met the goal of having at least 100 tests per day per 100,000 people at 126. And their ICU bed availability is around 40%, which is above the threshold of the goal of 30%. But there is no data at the moment that I'm seeing from Florida, from ProPublica, about hospital visits for flu-like illnesses. That we would have to go possibly to the Florida dashboard that came under fire because of this Rebecca Jones story. Hospitalizations is at 9,117. Now, I can't tell if that's right now, because 9,000 people being hospitalized for coronavirus at this moment is pretty staggering. And they say that the total cases have been 49,000. I would imagine that's 9,000, over 9,000 hospitalizations total, because there have been 2,100 deaths reported on this particular dashboard. And I see no reason at the moment to believe that Florida is covering up their numbers, more so that they are trying to get it right. So that's that story. But people were taking with it and running with it, saying that, oh, Ron DeSantis is just leading a government cover-up, and that he wants to make himself look as good as possible. Like, already, I mean, guys, it's not like DeSantis has already been dragged through the mud already. I mean, censoring data will only make him look worse. If anything, if there's good data out there, or if the numbers show something that actually would help you, why wouldn't you try to show it? But look, obviously I have no sympathy for politicians who are trying to cover up or make themselves look better. But I mean, right now we haven't seen anything from Florida in particular, particularly hospitalizations, because hospitalizations indicate that if people are getting sick, if cases are going up, which apparently ProPublica states that they are, but hospitalizations are not. That shows that people are getting the virus, but they're not getting really sick to the point that they need to go to a hospital, in which case that shows you that the virus for some people isn't as severe. You know, you have those asymptomatic carriers, you have people who experience mild flu-like symptoms. They might be younger people or middle-aged people, but certainly not, you know, above 70. And I can't think of any reason why this was brought out. It seems like it was a smear campaign against DeSantis. Now let's just look at Georgia for comparison's sake. Georgia hasn't had a stay-at-home order for 22 days, and they've had between 5 to 10 positive tests per 100,000 people per day. That's at least, not per day, I should say. They've had 5 to 10 positive tests per 100,000 people. Between May 8th and May 21st, that's around 6 people. That's been decreasing. What's also been decreasing are the percentage of positive tests that they've had. That's around 3.2%. And that's from May 8th to May 21st. They've been doing 184 tests per 100,000 people per day. And their ICU bed availability does not meet the goal of 30%. It's around 20%. However, the hospitalization data that we're seeing from Georgia is a lot more encouraging. And that shows between April 25th and May 9th, there has been a decrease of 1.8% in hospital visits for flu-like illnesses, which is obviously a very encouraging sign. A lot more states are starting to show that as well. And like District of Columbia, you got Connecticut, you got Colorado. Those states are decreasing. Say if you want to look at my state of the state I'm in Virginia, Virginia has been ho-hum. It's been okay. There's been a stay-at-home order for 53 days. There's been a medium number of positive tests per capita. That means 5 to 10 positive tests per 100,000 people at 9.9. Okay, so that's been increasing from May 8th to May 21st. However, the percentage of positive tests have been decreasing. It's gone down to 11% from May 8th to May 21st. There haven't been enough tests. 89 tests per 100,000 people per day. At 89 does not meet the goal of at least 100. ICU bed availability has been around 31%. Hospital visits, now that's the indicator we want to keep an eye on. That's been going down. That's down at 1.5%. Bottom line, Florida and Georgia were given the short end of the stick in terms of PR. And I think everybody can at least acknowledge that Florida and Georgia did a much better job in reopening their respective economies and have been handling the coronavirus pretty well. President Trump announced he's taking hydroxychloroquine earlier this week. And
a lot of good things have come out about the hydroxy. A lot of good things have come out. And you'd be surprised at how many people are taking it, especially the frontline workers, before you catch it. The frontline workers, many are taking it. I happen to be taking it.
Hydroxychloroquine?
I'm taking it, hydroxychloroquine.
When?
Right now, yeah. A couple of weeks ago, I started taking it. Because I think it's good. I've heard a lot of good stories. And if it's not good, I'll tell you right, I'm not going to get hurt by it. It's been around for 40 years for malaria, for lupus, for other things. I take it. Frontline workers take it. A lot of doctors take it. A lot of doctors take it. I take it. Now, I hope to not be able to take it soon because, I hope they come up with some answer. But I think people should be allowed to. I got a letter from a doctor the other day from Westchester, New York, around the area. He didn't want anything. He just said, sir, I have hundreds of patients, and I give them hydroxychloroquine. I give them the Z-Pak, which is zithromycin, and I give them zinc. And out of the hundreds of patients, many hundreds, over 300 patients, I haven't lost one. He said, please keep pressing that, sir. And if you look at that phony report that was put in, that report, on the hydroxy was given to people that were in extraordinarily bad condition. Extraordinarily bad. People that were dying. No, I think for whatever it's worth, I take it. I would have told you that 3-4 days ago, but we never had a chance because you never asked me the question.
Trump then defended his taking of hydroxychloroquine.
The FDA warned that hydroxychloroquine could cause serious side effects, especially with heart.
Yeah.
Why is it okay for you to promote the use of this drug when you're not a doctor and health experts are warning?
Well, I've worked with doctors, and if you look at the one survey, the only bad survey, they were giving it to people that were in very bad shape. They were very old, almost dead. It was a Trump enemy statement. Now, if you look at some of the reports that came out from Italy, that came out from France, that came out from a lot of our frontline workers take it because it possibly, and I think it does, but people are going to have to make up their own mind. Plus, it doesn't hurt people. It's been out on the market for 60 or 65 years for malaria, lupus, and other things. I think it gives you an additional level of safety, but you can ask many doctors are in favor of it. Many frontline workers won't go there unless they have the hydroxy. And so, again, this is an individual decision to make, but it's had a great reputation. And if it was somebody else other than me, people would say, gee, isn't that smart? But we are working on a lot of other things. I'll tell you what, the great medical companies that we have, if you look at what they're doing therapeutically, cure-wise, and the vaccine itself, and the vaccine, I think, is less important than some of the things they're working on. They're working on a cure, and we have more than one doing it, and very advanced. They're working on therapeutics, and they're working on vaccines.
Okay. So President Trump announces he takes his hydroxychloroquine. He's asked about the side effects. He's asked about why he would promote such a drug. Look, truth of the matter is, every drug you take has some level of side effects. There's almost no escaping it. And it's amazing to think that because President Trump is now taking this drug, all of a sudden, boom, people are going to die. Like, we're already in the middle of a pandemic. People are dying already. People have had a lot of bad side effects from hydroxychloroquine. As President Trump was stating right there, one of the particular studies that they did was on people who are already really old. A new study came out, and I'm quoting a Washington Post article that says anti-malarial drug touted by President Trump is linked to increased risk of death in coronavirus patients, study says. The subheader saying an analysis of 96,000 patients shows those treated with hydroxychloroquine were also more likely to suffer irregular heart rhythms. Okay, if you take a drug long enough, obviously you're going to experience probably longer health effects. I am obviously not a doctor, but anyone with a brain could understand that if you take a drug, it is going to have an impact on your health regardless of whatever it is that you are going through. I mean, take for something as benign as Benadryl. They've made a non-drowsy option, but now the original was drowsy. You take it, you get drowsy, you get tired. That was a side effect. And most of the time you take Benadryl at night, so if you were drowsy, you just go right to sleep. The thing is, I mean, look at antibiotics, for example. You take an antibiotic like azithromycin, you're more likely or not to have a lot of gastrointestinal issues, a lot of stomach problems. Like you'd have pretty bad diarrhea. And that happens to be because you're taking an antibiotic that goes after bacteria. It targets the bacteria in your gut, in your large intestine, and you're not able to digest food as well. So, again, another side effect. These things are mild compared to, say, taking hydroxychloroquine, which could cause, heart issues. But there are a lot of other health factors that come into play that could create, say, a lot of heart issues. Say if you have a family history of heart disease, that could be a factor right there. There is a greater likelihood that you could get a heart issue, say with hydroxychloroquine, But that's only if you're taking it in the long term. Trump here is taking it, and right now in the short term, we'll see how long he takes it. I don't know if he'll, as such, I don't know if he'll announce how long he's been taking it, or if he will announce down the road that he's still taking it. I can't see him do that. But I do find that the response to him has been rather fascinating.
Thank you, fellas. Thank you.
All right, that was stunning. The President of the United States, just to acknowledge that he is taking hydroxychloroquine, a drug that meant really to treat malaria and lupus. The President has insisted that it has enormous benefits for patients either trying to prevent or already have COVID-19. The fact of the matter is, though, when the President said, "What have you got to lose?" in a number of studies, those certainly vulnerable to the population have one thing to lose: their lives.
Look, you got a number of people on TV saying that, does Trump have a death wish? Does he want to kill people? At this point, like, you're just looking at it and being like, do you really have Trump derangement syndrome? Like, do you really just like, obviously he's not a doctor. He is saying that he is taking it for himself. I personally would never announce whether I'm taking a certain drug or not. That's my personal health, and I would never say something like that. Could it be reckless? He's saying it as president of the United States? Possibly. But this is Trump we're talking about here, okay? It's not like we're talking about like an Obama, a Bush, a Clinton, a Reagan. He's not polished like they were. But the misinformation that I want to highlight here is that there have been too many conflicting studies here. There have been studies saying that it's really bad for your health, but there have been studies or surveys from doctors around the country, around the world, who have said that a majority of their patients have responded well to hydroxychloroquine or chloroquine if they've had coronavirus. I'm not 100% sure where this is all going. It sounds like there's been a big push to try to completely dismiss hydroxychloroquine, and I think I know why. Back in April, it was reported that Trump had a small stake in the pharmaceutical company Sanofi, and his holdings were up to $1,500. And it is a French company, a French drug company that makes hydroxychloroquine. So people were trying to make it look like Trump had a financial stake in this, in building up hydroxychloroquine for financial gain, when that really doesn't meet the case. Trump's holdings don't violate federal conflict or federal laws. And it's such a benign amount of money, $1,500. Think of how much Trump is worth. He's worth at least a few $1 billion, okay? It's just like the continued insistence showing that Trump has this financial stake in hydroxychloroquine, or at least financial stake in Sanofi, or is it Sanofi? I don't know. I feel like Jay right now when he's trying to pronounce like Kiyomo or Jake Taper. He's just he never pronounce anything right. But yeah, I mean, like, essentially, this is what they're trying to constantly hit on, is that Trump has subtly a financial stake in hydroxychloroquine. Obviously, that's not really it's sort of a misreading and misinterpretation to think that he has a huge financial stake in it, whereas it's obviously very benign. Joe Biden went on The Breakfast Club with Charlemagne the God, and regardless of all the news that came out of it, this is the one particular piece that really got people riled up.
You got more questions, but I tell you, if you have a problem figuring out whether you're for me or Trump, then you ain't black.
It don't have nothing to do with Trump. It has to do with the fact I want something for my community.
I don't know how do you react to that. That's obviously like I don't know if he said that as a joke. Sounds like his campaign may have said that in jest. Here's some of the responses I'm seeing. Simone Sanders, who is now with the Biden campaign, for the record, she used to be with Bernie Sanders' campaign in 2016. So if you see where her allegiance lies. She's not really someone who is built on principle, but more so she is she goes where the money is, which, more credit, more power to her. She tweets, Vice President Biden spent his career fighting alongside and for the African American community. He won his party's nomination by earning every vote and meeting people where they are. And that's exactly what he intends to do this November. The comments made at the end of the Breakfast Club interview were in jest. But let's be clear about what the VP was saying. He was making the distinction that he would put his record with the African American community up against Trump's any day, period. First of all, if you got to explain the joke, you're already losing. Didn't sound like many people were laughing at that joke. Certainly, there's a lot of faux outrage, and obviously, because I'm not black, there's not a whole lot I can say whether something makes you black or not. I can say that as a person of color, there are certain things that you do that create a conflict within your community and make you less a part of that community. So there was one particular tweet that was deleted by Nicole Hannah-Jones, which I have saved and will show to you right now. She writes, or wrote before deleting, there is a difference between being politically black and being racially black. I am not defending anyone, but we all know this and should stop pretending that we don't. All right, I don't know why she deleted that, because at least there is a valid point, because being politically black is a standard that's being set. There's like an unwritten rule here. Like you have to be part of a monolithic groupthink. That's obviously different from many other communities. I mean, in the Jewish community, you have a lot of liberal Jews here in the United States. And there are right-leaning Jews and Republican Jews who have sort of been outcast. And the same exists in the Muslim community. You can look at, by and large, Muslims now are Democrats. They vote. They're left-leaning. They're Bernie Sanders supporters. Some of them are Joe Biden supporters. But by and large, they don't support President Trump. I, on the other hand, I am more independent thinking. I don't support President Trump, but I'm also not involved with many Democratic efforts to say replace them. But I'm also a journalist. I try to remain objective, and so that frightens people for some reason. I don't know why, but people don't like it that I can call out everyone. And I mean, it doesn't. For example, I've gotten flack from tons of people. Mehdi Hassan from The Intercept thinks I'm basically a Trump lackey or a Trump supporter, and it's interesting, the dynamic, because as soon as it's that dichotomy that if you're not with us, you're against us. And so because I'm not with them, all of a sudden I'm against them. So putting Joe Biden's comments in context here is, do you think that because you don't vote for him, you are not actually black? Look, there are plenty of people who probably think that. There was a whole episode in The Fresh Prince with Carlton and Will Smith trying to join the fraternity. And it all involved with, because Carlton, lives his life a certain way, doesn't make him any less black than, say, Will Smith. And that was sort of like the message that they were trying to send. And, he defended Carlton in that episode. They both booked it from that fraternity that they were pledging to. And that seemed to be a struggle that continues to persist to this day, is that if you don't think a certain way, does that make you any less of this particular person? Does that make you identify less with this particular community? And that seems to be the central part of this debate. And it's tough because most people would think that, like a black Republican can't exist. like they can't be black to the fullest because they vote for, say, a Republican candidate or a Republican politician. Look, the thing is, Biden's joke was something that really hits at a lot of communities of color. Whether you can identify with a particular community because you don't share all or 100% of the values that they share. So if you don't vote for a Democrat, if you don't vote for Joe Biden in the election, all of a sudden that doesn't make you part of that community. It doesn't make you part of that racial or ethnic group or religious group. And I think it's very important to distinguish that that is not the case, and that is something that we as a society have made up to try to otherize people and to try to keep people confined to particular boxes and try to ostracize anyone who decides they want to think independently. Now, I'm not saying I support anybody who votes for, say, Trump or Biden, and whether they're part of a particular ethnic group or racial group or minority or community of color. But I think we have to remember here that when it comes to independent thinkers, people who want to think outside the box, society is more inclined to reject those people because they become a threat. And it rebukes a lot of narratives and it ruffles the feathers of the people who are running the show. Habibis, that's been Keeping It Halal. Thank you for watching. If you like what you saw, hit the like button, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. I'd love to hear your feedback. I'll see you next time.